All right, let's get straight to it. We're diving into Canada's response to the latest U.S. tariffs from President Trump.
Yeah, and our intel, it's coming from comments made to the Green Mail.
Right, by David MacNaughton and Hassan Yussuff. Both are key advisors on Prime Minister Carney's U.S. trade team.
So you're getting a pretty direct line into how the government's thinking about this whole situation.
Exactly. And our mission today, it's pretty simple. Just understand Canada's strategy in this trade back and forth.
Okay, so what's immediately striking, I think, is Canada's core decision here. They're choosing not to hit back with retaliatory tariffs on, well, most U.S. food and essential goods.
Which is interesting, right? Because that feels like a departure from the usual playbook when countries, trade blows with tariffs.
Absolutely. You'd almost expect a tit-for-tat reaction, wouldn't you?
Yeah, almost immediately. So, unlike what we've seen sometimes in other trade disputes, Canada's not just reaching for the tariff lever on everyday goods.
Suggests a much more maybe nuanced calculation at play.
It does. And according to MacNaughton and Yussuff, this decision, well, it boils down to one key factor. Yeah. Preventing job losses here in Canada.
Right. And if we kind of connect this to the bigger picture, it signals a very targeted approach.
Targeted how?
Well, the focus isn't on just a broadside against all U.S. tariffs, It's about protecting specific parts of the Canadian economy.
Okay.
The advisors specifically mention avoiding tariffs on components essential to avoiding job loss.
Right, that phrase, components essential to avoiding job loss. Let's dig into that a bit. What's the significance there, do you think?
Well, think of things like specialized parts that Canadian factories need, maybe to build their products.
Okay, like inputs.
Exactly, inputs.
Yeah.
If Canada put tariffs on those, it could just increase costs for Canadian manufacturers.
Which could make them less competitive.
Yeah.
And potentially lead to layoffs. Ouch.
Precisely. It's sort of a recognition that in today's super interconnected world, tariffs can have, well, unintended consequences right back home.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about the price of groceries, though I'm sure that's part of the thinking.
Likely, yeah.
But it's really about understanding that intricate web of supply chains, making sure we don't inadvertently shoot ourselves in the foot while trying to respond to the U.S.
Right. This implies a pretty deep level of analysis must have gone on, figuring out exactly which U.S. goods are critical inputs for Canadian industries.
It sounds like a very calculated decision then, to maybe absorb some of the impact of the U.S. tariffs rather than risk doing further damage to Canada's own economic stability.
That seems to be the strategy, yes. A calculated risk, maybe?
So what does this all mean for you listening? Well, I think it really highlights that international trade isn't a simple game of, like, one-upmanship.
Definitely not. Countries have to carefully consider all those ripple effects of their actions and, prioritize protecting their own economic interests first. And especially if we consider the super close trading relationship between Canada and the U.S., this decision might signal a longer-term strategy.
A strategy of what? Yeah. Minimizing disruptions, maybe?
Yeah, minimizing disruptions, maintaining those crucial supply chain links, ultimately for the benefit of Canadian businesses and workers.
Okay, so wrapping it up, the core takeaway is that Canada, based on insights from these top trade advisors, is strategically choosing not to retaliate with tariffs on essential U.S. goods and key components.
And the driving force, it seems clear. Protecting the Canadian economy and, crucially, preventing job losses in key sectors.
Right. Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps, for everyone listening.
Yeah, in this complex dance of international trade, how do countries balance that need to respond to trade pressures with the, well, fundamental responsibility of safeguarding their own economic well-being?
And what does Canada's measured approach here suggest about its long-term trade strategy with its biggest partner, the United States? Something to mull over.